Reflecting on the past, it's clear my life had always appeared ideal from the outside. I'd invested decades in building a stable career and nurturing a close-knit family. My wife Betsy and I had been together for nearly 30 years, sharing everything from our early dreams to unforeseen setbacks. We met in college when we were both young, ambitious, and open to life's opportunities. Our relationship began not out of a whirlwind passion, but rather a deep respect and compatibility. We were simply two individuals on similar paths, so merging our lives felt natural. We married soon after graduation, and within a few years we welcomed our daughter Amy, who became the joyful center of our lives, bringing a purpose and cadence to our days. Our careers grew in parallel. Betsy pursued a path in education, earning respect as a dedicated teacher, while I moved up in the finance division of a company specializing in government contracts. Our schedules were well aligned, offering a balance of security and self-fulfillment that many couples aim for. Over time, our lives settled into a comfortable rhythm. We were a hard-working, well-adjusted family, thriving in a world we thought we understood. Life became a routine of work, home, occasional vacations, and visits from Amy, who eventually married and started her own family. When Amy moved out, Betsy and I had the chance to reconnect as individuals. I imagined we'd rekindle our romance, go on more dates, and make new memories. Yet, gradually, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. It was like a small crack forming in an otherwise solid foundation. I began to question if the life we'd built, one that once felt so secure and satisfying, could withstand this subtle erosion of closeness and understanding that seemed to be creeping into our relationship. I'm Jerry Adams. For most of my life, I genuinely took pride in the life I had created. I'd been married to Betsy for almost 3 decades, and our bond was something we cherished. Now in our mid-50s, we shared a beautiful family, including our only daughter, Amy, who had recently married a good man named Jim. Their marriage had entered its 3rd year, and they were expecting their first child. Our days were filled with simple routines, work, and family moments, and I thought we were content. But soon, that quiet confidence in my marriage would begin to unravel. Here's a bit of background about Betsy and me. We met in college, and though we weren't initially very close, began dating. We found compatibility and respect for each other's goals, so 18 months later we were married, and 2 years after that, Amy was born. She was a wonderful, bright daughter, and we felt blessed. Betsy and I both had stable careers. She had taught for 25 years, while I worked in finance, overseeing budgets and compliance for a government-focused company. With a small staff of 4, I had spent over 3 decades in the business, building a reputation for diligence. Our story takes a turn in the summer, during Betsy's break from teaching. Once a month, she'd meet up with 3 or 4 of her longtime girlfriends for dinner or a night in at someone's house. These gatherings were typically lighthearted, and sometimes they'd visit a bar, enjoy some music, and maybe dance if the mood struck. I'd never worried. Betsy rarely stayed out late or drank much. It all began about 3 years ago, around the time Betsy and I became empty nesters. We adored our daughter, and I'd hoped this phase might bring us closer, allowing us to rekindle some romance as we grew older. While our closeness had waned, we continued weekly dinners, sometimes alone and sometimes with friends. I believe we were content and happy together, or so I thought. One evening, on my way home after lunch with my friend Harold, who sometimes joined me when our wives got together, I noticed a few cars near our house. I parked around the corner, intending to walk home quietly. Entering through the side door onto our back porch, I heard loud laughter. It sounded like they'd enjoyed a few glasses of wine. Smiling, I listened, but then I heard Stephanie, Betsy's closest friend, say, "I love my husband Sam, but he's old, overweight, and can barely stand up. Sometimes I just need a little love, so I rely on a good personal stimulator instead." Stephanie continued, "And on the rare occasions he tries, he lasts about a minute." She laughed and added, "So I've started calling him Minute Man." The room erupted in laughter. I felt a pang of sympathy for Sam. He was a good man and happened to be at our house. Yes, he'd gained some weight, but Stephanie wasn't exactly petite herself. While she was usually friendly, I'd never heard her speak this way about her husband. I was stunned and felt a mix of surprise and empathy for Sam. Quietly, I stayed on the porch, listening to the rest of their conversation. Then Maggie chimed in. "Her husband Harold's a different story. He's definitely interested in Zex, but she's just not thrilled with his size." Laughing, she added, "I can barely feel anything, and after 3 kids, I kind of need something more." The room burst into laughter, and someone asked, "How big is it?" Maggie replied, "Maybe around 4 inches." Stephanie laughed harder. No, I mean, how hard and big is he? Maggie laughed along. Oh, he's hard, but we might as well call him Teeny Weeny. The laughter was explosive, filling the room with unrestrained amusement. Stephanie leaned toward Maggie and said, You're welcome to borrow my personal stimulator anytime you want. When it's cold, he'd probably have trouble even finding it. Standing outside, I felt stunned at how openly these women were mocking their husbands' most personal attributes. Harold, a good friend of mine, was being humiliated, and I felt a deep sympathy for him. Amid the laughter, I was grateful my wife had stayed quiet. At least she seemed to have a little respect. Then it was Erica's turn to chime in. I didn't know her husband, Ollie, too well, but he always struck me as a decent guy. She said, I'm going through menopause and really don't have much interest anymore, but Ollie's still got a strong drive. Sometimes he just begs to, well, relieve himself in front of me, and I let him. Everyone laughed, and Erica added with a smirk, I like to tease him and make him feel like an awkward teenager. I call him the blue ball boy. The room roared with laughter again, and then I heard my wife laugh along. I was horrified. Then Stephanie, leading the pack, said, All right, Betsy, what should we call Jerry? What's his nickname? Holding my breath, I waited, tense with anticipation. Betsy giggled and said, How about Boner Boy? The women erupted in laughter. I stood frozen, stunned by her response. In all these years, Betsy had never said anything like this to me. I'd always been respectful, never pushy, and if she was tired, I would simply kiss her goodnight. Had she really meant that, or was it just a joke? I thought back to times when our closeness had slowed down, especially during her menopause. I'd never heard a complaint from her, so this felt like a slap in the face. My heart was pounding with anger and hurt as I stood outside, trying to process it all. Then Stephanie made a suggestion. We girls are just as bad. Let's go check out that new club and let some young guys dance with us. If our husbands aren't keeping up, we might as well let those guys have a little fun. The others laughed and nodded, agreeing it sounded like a good idea. Now I found myself wondering if these bar nights were more than just innocent fun. Betsy usually came home sober and calm, just took a shower and went to bed. I'd even asked her once, Did you dance with anyone? She laughed, brushing it off. Nah, I have everything I need at home. But now I questioned everything. Could there be more going on? I couldn't help but feel uneasy. They toasted to their husbands, jokingly labeling them Minute Man, Teeny Weeny, Blue Ball Boy, and Boner Boy. Everyone raised their glasses, laughing. I stood there, feeling sick, wondering if this was a regular thing. Finally, Erica raised her glass again. Look, we're all married, and we're lucky our guys are good fathers and providers, even if they're not perfect. I felt a glimmer of hope that the conversation would end on a good note, but Stephanie sneered. Sure, they're good fathers, but sometimes a girl just needs more. Just once with a young guy wouldn't hurt. There was a pause before the laughter resumed. As it got late, Erica finally sighed. Well, we should probably head back to our old boys again. I quietly slipped out the back, heading to my car before anyone noticed. Anger boiled up inside me, so I drove around, trying to cool down. I parked at a nearby park, replaying the evening's conversation in my mind. I'd always thought of these women as friendly and decent, but hearing them talk this way was a harsh reality check. Sure, I'd gained a little weight, but I stayed active and thought I was in better shape than most of them. None of them, I imagined, would attract younger men. I wrestled with the thought of confronting Betsy. Should I tell her what I'd overheard? As I sat in the car, I realized I still loved her deeply, but the hurt and anger from her disrespect stung. How would she feel if I'd spoken about her that way with other men's wives? By the time I returned home, it was dark, and everyone had left. I entered through the back door, and there was Betsy cleaning up. She turned and smiled as I walked in. Hi, honey. How was your day? She asked, her voice warm and inviting. I looked at her, almost as if I didn't recognize her anymore. I wanted to confront her, but instead stood there silently. Honey, are you all right? She asked, concern in her eyes. You look upset. I just had a rough day, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm really tired. She looked puzzled. I thought you went out with Harold for dinner. Harold's fine, I replied curtly. I just had a bad day. My head's pounding. I think I'll shower, read a bit, and go to bed. She moved closer, arms around me. Can I help? Anything you need? She asked, kissing my cheek gently. No, I'm fine, I muttered, pulling away slightly. Just really tired. After a quick shower, I lay in bed. Betsy peeked into the room. Honey, if you need anything, just let me know. I love you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, still feeling the sting of betrayal in my heart. I took a few sleeping pills, eventually drifting into an uneasy sleep. I remember her sliding into bed beside me, trying to cuddle, but I pretended to be asleep. She sighed, rolled over, and soon fell asleep herself. On Saturday morning, I woke up early and decided to go for a longer bike ride than usual. Betsy was still sleeping, so I quietly headed out, aiming for an hour ride instead of my usual 30 minutes. I hoped the extended ride would help me clear my mind and build up some endurance. When I returned, Betsy was already having breakfast. Drenched in sweat, I went straight to the shower. "Jerry," she called out, "I'll make you breakfast. What would you like? I'm going shopping with Amy to look for maternity clothes today." "No need to worry about me," I answered from the bathroom. "I'll just grab a bagel and some coffee. Have a good time." By the time I came downstairs, she had already left. I felt a wave of relief. I needed the time alone to process everything I'd overheard the previous night. The anger lingered, and questions continued to swirl in my mind about what really happened on those nights out. I thought of Dan, one of my younger colleagues, 32 years old, who'd been with the company for 5 years. Betsy had only met him once, so I figured I might be able to ask him discreetly, without drawing any suspicion. Throughout the day, I combed through Betsy's emails, going back about 2 years. She never kept her account locked, so I could check freely. I found nothing unusual. In fact, I could see she hadn't even deleted any old messages, which was somewhat reassuring. Around 5 p.m., I heard her car pull up. She came in, talking animatedly about the day and all the baby items she and Amy had found. I was glad to hear about it. I loved our daughter and knew she'd appreciate our support. Betsy was talking nonstop, and I nodded along, half listening. When she casually mentioned that she'd eat leftovers from last night's get-together, it jolted me back to reality, reigniting the anger I'd been suppressing. I tried to keep my emotions hidden, but she noticed my silence. "Honey, what's bothering you?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. "Nothing," I replied stiffly. "Just work stress. I'm hoping it'll get resolved soon." She leaned over and kissed me as I began clearing the table, gathering dishes for the sink. Betsy had always been the better cook, but over the years, I'd taken on the role of cleaning up afterward. As I washed the dishes, she poured herself a glass of wine and sat back down at the table. "Jerry, are you happy?" she asked softly, her tone gentle but probing. "What does happy even mean?" I responded, a bit evasively. "Yes, I think so. What about you?" "Of course," she replied with a slight smile. "But sometimes you seem so distant." "Do you enjoy spending time with your girlfriends?" I asked, sensing an opportunity to address what had been on my mind. Looking surprised, she smiled. "Yes, I do. We have a lot in common. It's nice to relax together and just be ourselves." "When you go out to listen to music, do you ever dance with other men?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She laughed, then gave me a playful look. "Sometimes, if someone asks. But it's damageless, Jerry. I don't let anyone get too close." "Do you dance with younger men?" I pressed, watching her reaction closely. "Do they ever make you feel nervous?" She laughed again, shaking her head. "Jerry, I think you're jealous. You don't have to worry, darling." I shrugged, trying to keep the mood light. "Just curious. A group of attractive women like you could probably draw quite a bit of attention." She leaned forward, her tone softening. "Jerry, you know I would never let anyone get too close." "What about the others?" I asked. "If any of them ever did something inappropriate, would you tell me?" She gave me a puzzled look. "Jerry, I don't think any of them would cross a line. You know them, they're not like that." After a moment, I suggested, "Why don't we have a picnic and invite them, along with their husbands?" She shrugged. "They're all pretty busy, I think." "Okay," I replied, still watching her reaction. "Just a thought." "When are you all meeting up again?" I inquired. Betsy hesitated, then said, "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about this. Stephanie has a lake house, and she thought it'd be nice for all of us to go there next weekend. Just the wives, no husbands allowed." I studied her expression. "When were you planning on telling me?" She looked a bit sheepish. "I was going to mention it last night, but you didn't seem up to talking. We're planning to leave Friday morning and come back Monday evening." "So, right before the 4th of July?" I asked, frowning. "We usually have a party that day. Are you going to miss it?" "No, I'll be back for the fireworks," she said quickly. "You'll miss everything else," I pointed out. "Amy and Jim usually come over." She seemed to pick up on my disappointment. "Jerry, I promise I'll make it up to you. Sometimes we just need a break, you know?" "I understand," I replied quietly, turning away. I headed to my office feeling more unsettled than ever. Sitting in my office, I felt the familiar churn of anger and betrayal rising inside me. The thought of Betsy going away with her friends, especially after overhearing their conversations, gnawed at me. Betsy rarely went out of town, but after what I'd heard, doubts began to settle in. The next morning, I decided to bring it up again to see her reaction. "Honey," I said casually over breakfast, "how about I join you at the lake on Friday evening? I could head back Monday morning so you'd still get your time with the girls and we could also spend some time together." "Jerry, for God's sake, what's gotten into you?" she snapped, sounding irritated. "We just need some time together as friends. It's only a weekend." "Fine, enjoy yourself," I replied, feeling a sting from her reaction. "But would you be as understanding if I wanted to go on a weekend golf trip with the guys?" "That's different," she replied dismissively. "Golf is expensive and I don't like being left alone. Please try to understand. You're acting like a child." "All right," I said, voice tense. "Enjoy your weekend." That was the last time I tried to change her mind. Maybe she was right. Maybe friends did need time together. But since that overheard conversation, an uneasy feeling had taken root in my chest, growing each day. That evening, while she was in the shower, I noticed her phone on the counter and decided to check it. Surprisingly, it was locked. She'd never locked it before. I felt a surge of determination and knew I needed a plan. Betsy and I had almost identical phones, so the next morning I took hers with me to work, leaving mine behind. At the office, I handed her phone to Dan, my IT expert. "Can you help me get into this?" I asked. Dan looked at me curiously but got to work. After a few guesses at her passcode, he cracked it and the phone unlocked. I started scrolling through her messages, looking for anything unusual. Soon enough, I came across a long thread between her and Stephanie. As I read, my stomach twisted. It was clear Stephanie was the ringleader, coordinating the lake trip and arranging special guests for the weekend. Teresa, another friend, was helping her plan. The more I read, the angrier I got. Betsy seemed genuinely excited for the weekend. Only Maggie had reservations, texting, "If the husbands find out, they'll be furious." Stephanie brushed it off, replying, "It'll be fun, Maggie. If no one knows, no injury done." Betsy agreed with Stephanie, and Erica chimed in, saying she couldn't wait. I closed the phone, my blood boiling. That evening, I returned home feeling sickened by what I'd read. Betsy greeted me with a warm smile, but her gaze shifted to the counter, noticing her phone. "Did you take my phone with you by accident?" she asked, sounding a little annoyed. "Yes," I replied, keeping my expression neutral. "I didn't realize until I got to work." She flushed slightly, crossing her arms. "Jerry, why did you take my phone? That's my personal space. You shouldn't be snooping." "What are you hiding, Betsy?" I asked calmly. "Nothing," she snapped defensively. "I just don't like you invading my privacy." That night, I barely slept. The uneasy feeling gnawed at me, so the next day, I decided to call Amy, hoping she might know something. She sounded cheerful and mentioned that her mom had told her about the trip and seemed genuinely excited. "No, Dad," she said brightly. "Mom's really just looking forward to time with her friends. I think she deserves it." "Yeah, you're right, honey," I replied, trying to mask the bitterness in my tone. The following day, Betsy seemed to sense my mood. She came over, wrapping her arms around my neck. "Honey, you know I love you, right?" she said softly. "It's just a simple girl's getaway. I'll be so glad to see you when I get back." I gave her a weak smile and murmured, "I hope so, Betsy." On Thursday, I decided to check her messages once more. Stephanie was still hyping up the weekend and Teresa was putting together the final plans. Frustrated, I decided to show Dan the texts. His expression changed as he read them. "Jerry," he said slowly, "who is this Teresa?" "I don't know," I replied. "Someone who works with Stephanie, apparently." A knowing smile spread across his face. "Jerry, Teresa is my sister." I felt a jolt of surprise. "Your sister?" Dan nodded, looking sympathetic. "She recently organized a bachelorette party for a friend and mentioned that one of her coworkers was planning to hire a pole dancer for a ladies' weekend." "I didn't know it was your wife's group." My heart sank as he explained. Now, it all became painfully clear. They were planning to hire a pole dancer. I felt an urgent need to know how far this would go. I continued reading Betsy's messages, searching for more clues. Then I saw a message from Stephanie, joking, "Tell Boner Boy after this weekend that he better be nice to you or you might not need him anymore." My anger flared. I knew I had to confront the situation, so I decided to contact the other husbands involved. I started with Harold, subtly asking if he'd noticed anything odd with Maggie lately. He mentioned she seemed anxious and distant, but he hadn't thought much of it. Without giving too much away, I asked him to meet me at my place on Friday night. Sam and Ollie, the other husbands, were initially reluctant, but I eventually convinced them to join us, hinting they might want to know what was going on. I also suggested they try checking their wives' phones or emails, but no one had any success. On Friday morning, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. Betsy was still asleep, so I went to check her bags to see what she'd packed. Everything looked normal, nothing out of the ordinary. I continued scanning through her emails and messages. In one, Stephanie wrote, "I can't wait to see what Teresa set up," but wouldn't reveal the details. Betsy was planning to leave by 8 a.m. for the 2-hour drive. They wanted an early start to relax by the lake. I'd taken the day off without telling her. As I ate breakfast, I finally heard her start the shower. Normally, I leave around 8:30, but today I decided to head out early, leaving a note that read, "Dear Betsy, I hope you have a wonderful time with your friends. I realize you've seemed unhappy, and I think part of it is that we've grown distant. I'm sorry I haven't made you feel cherished, but I'd rather you stay and help us reconnect. I've been feeling low lately and wanted us to feel close again, like we always did. I've loved you deeply for 28 years, and I want you to be happy. Yours always, Jerry." Around 8 a.m., Betsy got a text from Stephanie, saying she'd be there to pick her up shortly. Betsy replied, "Stephanie, something's not right with Jerry. I might not be able to leave until I talk with him." Stephanie responded, "Betsy, come on, he's a big boy, probably just pouting about being left alone for the weekend. Boner boy will get over it." "Damn it, Stephanie, this isn't funny," Betsy replied. "I think he suspects something. I haven't been treating him well lately, and I need to talk to him." All right, I'll check with Harold. He left early, too," Stephanie texted back. The women soon realized they couldn't get hold of their husbands. Stephanie then messaged the group, "Pack up, ladies, we're all going. No excuses, the guys will survive." Over the past week, I'd carefully planned what to do. Now it was time to put it all into action. Maybe our wives thought of us as old, lazy, and oblivious, but I wanted to see if we could save our marriages, or at least stop them from destroying them. Harold and I talked as we waited for Sam and Ollie to arrive. When they walked in, both looked tense. "Good," I said. "I asked you here because I have reason to believe our wives are about to betray us this weekend. Are you willing to face this?" I shared the whole story, how I overheard them talking, hacked into Betsy's phone, and uncovered their plans. Sam, Ollie, and Harold grew furious, but then silence fell over the room. I laid out my plan. Tomorrow morning, we'll go to the cabin early, wait for their guests to arrive, and see what unfolds. We agreed to ignore any emails, calls, or messages. "Let's leave them in the dark," I suggested. It would be tough, but it was necessary to make them uneasy. We stayed up late, strategizing, and agreed to regroup at 9 a.m. that morning. I had a restless night, glancing at my phone as Betsy messaged me about 20 times. Her tone shifted from worry to anger, finally calling me a spoiled brat for trying to ruin her weekend. Exhausted, I tried to sleep, eventually dozing off. The next morning, I called my daughter Amy, and she told me her mother was very worried. Amy had reassured her, saying, "Mom, we invited Dad. He mentioned you wanted some time with the girls." Betsy hung up abruptly. I checked our bank account, a habit since I managed our finances, and saw Betsy had withdrawn $500 for the trip. Now I felt certain of what she was planning. I informed the guys and suggested they check their accounts. They discovered their wives had also withdrawn significant amounts. Sam, Ollie, and Harold were both embarrassed and outraged at the blatant disrespect. "Channel that anger for when we see them," I told them, not wanting anyone to act rashly. Our goal was to reach the cabin by 8 p.m. and stay hidden, arriving well before the women. Teresa had kept me informed after I spoke with Dan. She said, "Stephanie came to me asking for a good pole dancer for a girls' night." Teresa had connections and had shown Stephanie some photos, which got her giddy with excitement. Teresa described the guy as in his late 30s, tall, handsome, and very well built. She added with a smirk that his endowment was large, exactly what Stephanie had in mind. Stephanie had even asked if he could do extra things, and Teresa laughed, replying, "Of course." Stephanie went on, "We're all married to a bunch of old farts, and we want to see what a hot young guy can do for 4 women. Hearing this, I was seething. Teresa added that Stephanie assured everyone it would be hot and that they'd all enjoy it. As the men listened, their faces burned with anger. Thankfully, our plan allowed us to intervene, but our futures with our wives now felt painfully uncertain. As we neared the cabin, I texted Teresa to confirm that everything was in place. She called me back after stepping outside. "Teresa, I can't thank you enough. You've really opened our eyes. Maybe this will help save a marriage or two," I told her. "Jerry, I've been through this before. My ex-husband cheated on me, so when Dan told me what was happening and realized I knew Stephanie, I was glad to help," she replied. Stephanie had already told the group that a pole dancer would be joining them. I needed to know how Betsy had reacted, even if I could sense Teresa was hesitant. Finally, she admitted, "Jerry, I think your wife is under Stephanie's influence, letting her lead her into things she wouldn't normally do." "Teresa, please be straight with me. Did they admit to anything from their bar nights?" I asked. "It's tough to say, but they did mention a few guys who kissed them and touched them. No one went all the way," she explained. She added, "As for Betsy, she mentioned that one guy took her hand and placed it, well, let's say he didn't let go." I felt my anger rising, but kept calm. Teresa continued, "They know what's coming." Stephanie told them, "If you want a real man's size, just wait until you see what's in store. He's here to entertain us, and maybe we'll get to join in." "I have to go now. They think I'm talking to the pole dancer," she said, pausing. "Jerry, just remember your wife isn't the worst here. Stephanie's the bad apple." "Thank you, Teresa. Without you, we'd be blind and clueless. Goodbye," I said, ending the call. When I told the other men what Teresa had shared, their faces turned red with anger. We were almost at the cabin. I stopped the group, planning to speak to the wives first as the spokesperson. I texted Teresa, "We'll be there in 10 minutes. She replied, "Got it. They're just finishing dinner." At 7:30 p.m., we arrived at the cabin, nestled on a small hill overlooking a serene lake. Sam told me it had been in his family for 3 generations. The cabin was rustic but charming, with a view that stretched for miles. The nearest neighbor was at least half a mile away. We parked on a dirt road, about 200 yards from the cabin, and approached quietly, hearing the women's voices from the back porch as they gazed over the lake, laughing and drinking wine. Sam pushed open the front door and we all walked in silently. The women hadn't seen us yet. Sam walked to the back door, opened it, and the laughter abruptly stopped. All 4 of them turned, faces going pale. "Hello?" Sam said with a smile as they stood in shock. Finally, Stephanie managed, "Sam, what the hell are you doing here? This is a girls' weekend." "Oh, I know. Before you leave, why don't you come inside? I want you to meet some friends," he said, gesturing to us. "Ladies, let me introduce Blue Ball Boy, Tiny Weenie Boy, Boner Boy, and of course, the infamous Minute Man." Turning to his wife, he asked, "Isn't that right?" Stephanie was speechless, which was incredibly satisfying. I stepped in. "Please, have a seat. We need to talk." Betsy started to say something, but I stopped her with a firm, "No." She sank down, tears welling up. Maggie looked ghostly, and Erica seemed to be in shock. "We'll speak first, then you'll have your turn," I said calmly. Turning to Teresa, I said, "You must be Teresa. I can't thank you enough. My wife tells me you're her age. How old are you?" Feigning surprise, Teresa replied, "I'm 34. "Well, I guess my wife is either blind or lying. Isn't that right, dear?" I said with a sarcastic wink. The wives seemed anxious, checking their watches as the time approached 8 p.m., likely expecting the pole dancer. Erica finally broke the silence, suggesting, "Let's all go out to eat." I chuckled. "Nice try, Erica. But we know a pole dancer's scheduled to be here any minute. You know, the one you all were looking forward to for a special show." My wife began to cry, and Maggie was already tearing up. Harold's patience finally snapped. "Maggie, how could you humiliate me like that, talking about me in front of your friends?" he demanded. "I'll buy you a baseball bat. Maybe that'll make you happy." Ollie followed, addressing Erica. "Erica, you've humiliated me. I loved you, but you've betrayed me, making me out to be a pathetic fool. Well, if that's how you see me, then fine. I'm done." Sam turned to Stephanie. "Stephanie, you're a disgrace. Your insecurities have poisoned these women, dragging them into this mess. I thought I loved you, but you've made that impossible. After our divorce, you can continue your search for a bigger man on your own. And by the way, if you gain any more weight, you'll be a perfect fit for the Macy's Thanksgiving parade." He finished with a cruel smirk, which left her speechless. Finally, I looked at Betsy. "Betsy, you've burned every bridge. You lied to me and intentionally hurt me. In the future, don't worry about seeing me disgusting. You'll never get close enough to see that again. I'm sorry I wasted 28 years loving you, thinking you were loyal. Maybe you'll enjoy yourself at the bar, feeling up other men. And in case you're wondering, no, there won't be a pole dancer." We ended that little plan as soon as we knew about it. but since you took out $500 from our account, I hope you can find somewhere else to stay or go hire someone else for your entertainment." With that, I turned away, leaving the room in stunned silence. The women followed us outside, trying to explain something, but we couldn't hear a word. Before we left, we deflated 2 of the tires on Stephanie's car. Since it was a holiday weekend, she wouldn't be able to find anyone to fix them until the next day at the earliest. Teresa had already taken off. After a bit of conversation with our wives, we all went back home. My wife kept calling and emailing, but everything she sent was nonsense. She apologized, saying it was just a big joke. In one voice message, she said, "Jerry, I'm so sorry. It was all a joke. We realized it was offensive. I would never cheat on you. It was just for fun, and I should have told you beforehand. I love you, and no one could ever replace you." I ignored her messages. Instead, I went over to my daughter Amy's house for a picnic. I told her that her mom hired a pole dancer for entertainment, and I just didn't trust her anymore. Amy was shocked and disappointed. When her mom called her later, she asked, "Did you enjoy the pole dancer?" Her mother told her it was a joke and not to mention it again. Our wives made it back home on July 4th. By that time, I had already met up with Amy and Jim. Betsy eventually joined us. "Jerry, Amy, and Jim, I'm truly sorry for what happened. I love you all very much, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right," Betsy said. Amy replied, "I'm disappointed, Mom. I can't believe you think this is okay. I haven't seen a pole dancer since college." "Really?" Jim said. "Guess there's more to learn about my wife." "Jim, that was before I met you," Amy responded. "And we were just college girls, not grown women like Mom." Betsy started crying and went home. When I returned after the fireworks, she was already asleep, which was a relief. I had moved my things into Amy's old room, so there was no need for a conversation. The next morning, I left for work early, avoiding any interaction with her entirely. At the office, Dan looked up as I came in. "How did things go?" he asked. "It was rough," I said, "but I'm glad we managed to prevent things from spiraling even further." He paused, studying me. "Do you think there's a chance to save your marriage?" "I hope so," I admitted. I still care about her, despite everything that's happened, but I honestly don't know. Betsy messaged me, asking what time I'd be home, and said she was making dinner. "We really need to talk," she added. I told her I'd be home at my usual time. When I walked in, the house smelled wonderful. She greeted me and said, "I missed you, and I'm sorry. Can we talk after dinner?" "Sure," I agreed. Dinner was quiet, though the food was delicious. Afterward, Betsy asked if we could move to the living room, where she brought out dessert and wine. I thought, she's really pulling out all the stops here. "Jerry, I'm sorry about the weekend," she began. "None of us intended for anything to happen with a pole dancer. I didn't even know about it until we got there." "When did you find out, Betsy?" I asked. "Why didn't you try to stop Stephanie, or at least tell her it was inappropriate?" She hesitated. "I thought about it, but it was her cabin and she planned everything. We just went along with it." "And what about those bar nights? How many men have you flirted with, and how many have flirted with you?" I pressed. "None," she insisted. "I've never done anything inappropriate." "One of your friends told me some guy grabbed your hand and you commented on how big he was," I replied, looking at her carefully. "That's not true," she protested. "Maybe he brushed my hand, but I didn't notice, and I certainly didn't encourage it." She sighed. "I've had a lot of time to reflect these past 2 weeks, and honestly, I'm unhappy. When I needed you, you didn't seem to care. The way you talk about us is hurtful, like we're strangers, not husband and wife." "Where's all this coming from?" I asked, feeling blindsided. "Honey, it's just girl talk," she said, trying to explain. "We exaggerate sometimes, especially when we're drinking and being silly. And how would you feel if the men joked about you like that?" I shot back. "If they called you names, you'd be furious. It's disrespectful." "I'm so sorry, Jerry. It was wrong, and we shouldn't have done it. I regret even planning a girls' weekend like that," she said. "I don't know why Stephanie suggested it." "Oh, I do," I replied. "She doesn't respect her husband, and she convinced you all to disrespect yours, too." "Jerry, that's not true. I love you more than anyone. I promise I'll make things right. You mean everything to me," she pleaded. "We'll see. For now, I'm sleeping in Amy's old room. If you want my trust back, you'll have to earn it. And I think you should see a counselor. Meanwhile, I'll keep my distance." "Honey, I love you, and you're not foolish. I made a mistake and took you for granted. But I don't think I need counseling," she replied, attempting to avoid the idea. "Maybe if Stephanie hadn't been such an influence, none of this would have happened," I responded firmly. That's exactly why I think counseling is necessary. She looked taken aback, but eventually nodded. I'll do whatever you want, she said, though I could sense her hesitation. If it helps, I'll go with you, I offered. But you need to find someone you're comfortable talking to. After that incident, all of us husbands started to realize one thing the women had right. We needed to get in better shape. So we committed to hitting the gym and focusing on ourselves. I felt stronger and healthier, and my daughter even mentioned that I was looking more handsome. At my age, 56, I thought, does that even matter? In the end, 2 of the couples were actively in counseling, and 1 marriage was nearly over. Stephanie and Sam were headed for divorce. Stephanie moved to her sister's place out of state. Sam was a bit down about it, but he soon started dating again, and honestly, no one missed Stephanie. Erica and Ollie, on the other hand, were making progress in counseling. They were working hard to rebuild their relationship. Erica had become more attentive, while Ollie was learning to be more assertive and wasn't willing to be seen as a pushover. I think they have a good shot at making it. Maggie and Harold seemed to be in a strong place too. Maggie had shown genuine remorse from the beginning, openly expressing how much she cared for her husband. She even began to brag a bit, saying Harold was her hottest lover since Casanova, which gave Harold a new boost of confidence. As for Betsy and me, we continued to live under the same roof, and she kept going to counseling. Technically, we were still married, but I discovered a new joy in life, my beautiful granddaughter, Brittany. Sometimes Betsy seemed truly regretful, but I wasn't entirely sure. Amy, our daughter, encouraged me to give Betsy another chance, and gradually, Betsy and I were finding some closeness again. The Zex was okay, but I still wanted that spark back. She says she genuinely needs me and loves me, but only time will tell. In the meantime, I'm feeling better about myself, and a few women at the gym have shown some interest, especially when they've heard bits of my story. For now, I'm keeping my options open and seeing where life leads me. Reflecting on the events that have unfolded, I can't help but feel a profound mixture of sadness, disappointment, and resilience. The past few months have tested the foundations of my marriage in ways I never anticipated. It's been a long journey, one that forced me to confront the imperfections in our relationship, the hidden resentments, and the subtle erosions of closeness that I'd brushed aside for far too long. Betsy and I had built a life together on what I thought was mutual respect and understanding. We had shared decades of memories, raised a wonderful daughter, and faced life's ups and downs hand in hand. But seeing that bond shaken to its core by her actions and the cavalier attitude she displayed with her friends has left scars that may never fully heal. Betrayal isn't just about actions. It's about trust and respect, the invisible threads that hold a relationship together. As I navigated the aftermath, I realized that I had neglected parts of myself. I had taken comfort in the routine, in the predictable patterns of our life. But maybe that predictability had dulled something essential in our relationship, and perhaps even within myself. For years, I poured my energy into work and family, rarely reflecting on my own happiness or needs. In a strange way, this crisis forced me to reconnect with myself, to ask questions I hadn't considered in years. What do I want from my life? How do I want to be loved? The nights were the hardest. Lying alone in Amy's old room, I was haunted by memories of better times, times when Betsy and I would stay up late, talking about our dreams, laughing over shared memories. I kept asking myself if those moments were real or if they were merely illusions of a bond that was never as strong as I believed. Betrayal has a way of making you doubt everything, of making you question every choice, every word, every moment of vulnerability shared. My daughter Amy has been a pillar through all of this. Her support, her kindness, and her unwavering belief in the strength of family kept me grounded. Yet even she was deeply disappointed in her mother. It's heartbreaking to see your child caught in the crossfire of marital discord, to witness her grappling with the idea that her parents are no longer the ideal she once held in her mind. And as I watch her raise her own family, I feel an urgent need to model strength and resilience, to show her that love and forgiveness are possible, even in the face of deep hurt. Counseling has been a part of this journey. Betsy agreed to seek help, to confront her own actions and the reasons behind them. At first, I attended sessions alongside her, hoping to bridge the gap that had grown between us. But over time, I realized that I needed space to heal independently, to rebuild my sense of self before I could fully engage in rebuilding our relationship. It's a process, a gradual unfolding of emotions that can't be rushed or forced. The camaraderie with the other husbands has been an unexpected solace. Knowing that they, too, face similar betrayals has lessened my sense of isolation. Together, we've reclaimed parts of ourselves, rediscovering the importance of self-worth and self-care. Each of us has grown in our own way, finding a new rhythm, a new strength, and maybe even a newfound appreciation for life beyond marriage. As for Betsy and me, we're in a tentative place. We still share a home, still interact daily, but the wounds are fresh and trust is a fragile thing. She says she loves me, that she regrets everything, but words alone won't mend the brokenness inside me. Rebuilding will take time, patience, and more honesty than we've ever shared before. Whether we can truly come back from this, only time will tell. In the meantime, I'm focusing on my granddaughter, Brittany. She's a light in my life, a reminder of the pure, unconditional love that still exists. Watching her grow, seeing the world through her innocent eyes, helps me find hope amid the turmoil. She's a reminder that life goes on, that there is joy and beauty even in the midst of pain. Every day, I wake up with a choice: to hold on to bitterness or to move forward, however slowly, however painfully. Right now, I'm choosing to move forward, not just for myself, but for the possibility of healing, for the potential to find peace in whatever form it takes. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm determined to face it with strength, self-respect, and an open heart. Moving forward hasn't been easy, but every day brings a small shift in perspective. I'm realizing that the pain of betrayal doesn't just dissipate, it transforms. It shapes how you see yourself, your partner, and even the world around you. At first, I was overwhelmed by anger and confusion. I couldn't fathom how someone I loved so deeply could trivialize our bond, turning our shared life into fodder for casual jokes. But now, that anger is cooling into something else, perhaps a quieter resolve to rebuild not just my marriage, but my sense of self. The counseling sessions, though difficult, have been revealing. Sitting there, forced to confront emotions that had been simmering under the surface, I began to see patterns. Betsy had been feeling neglected, distant, perhaps even resentful, in ways she'd never shared with me. I realized I'd done the same, pushing down frustrations, choosing silence over confrontation. Perhaps both of us had unwittingly contributed to the erosion of our connection, slipping into routines that left little room for genuine emotional closeness. In this, there's a strange relief. It wasn't just her actions that broke us, it was our mutual neglect. During one of our sessions, Betsy spoke through tears, admitting she didn't know why she let herself be swept up in those conversations, why she entertained the idea of hiring someone to spice things up. She said she felt trapped between wanting to feel young again and fearing that our life had lost its spark. Hearing her say that hurt, but it also illuminated something I'd missed. We were both clinging to memories of the people we used to be, not fully embracing the people we've become. As hard as it is, I'm learning to see her not just as my wife, but as someone with her own fears, insecurities, and struggles. My own journey toward self-discovery has been grounding. I've reconnected with friends, re-engaged in hobbies I'd set aside, and even taken up new challenges at the gym. It's as if I'm rediscovering parts of myself that had been dormant. Sometimes I find myself smiling at the smallest things. A brisk morning walk, a conversation with Amy, a quiet moment with Brittany. These moments remind me that happiness isn't always grand or sweeping. Often it's found in the simplicity of everyday life. The gym, in particular, has become a sanctuary. I never imagined that at this age, I'd be lifting weights and running on a treadmill, surrounded by people half my age. But each workout feels like a small victory, a step toward reclaiming my sense of strength and vitality. It's not just about looking better, it's about feeling better, about proving to myself that I'm capable of change, even after decades of routine. Betsy has noticed the changes in me, and it's shifted the dynamic between us. She's more attentive now, more thoughtful in her words and actions. There's a gentleness to our interactions that wasn't there before, almost as if we're relearning how to be together. The closeness isn't back yet, not fully, but there are moments when I see a flicker of what we used to share. A laugh over a shared memory, a quiet touch as she passes by. It's not much, but it's something, a seed of hope that perhaps we can rebuild from the ashes. Still, the trust isn't fully there. Every now and then, doubts creep in. I wonder if she's being genuine, if the remorse she expresses is deep enough to sustain the changes we both need to make. There are times when I feel the urge to check her phone, to verify that her commitment is real. But then I stop myself. If I'm to heal, I need to let go of that urge to control, to police her actions. Healing, I realize, requires faith, a faith in myself, in my ability to handle whatever comes, even if that means enduring more hurt. Our conversations have also deepened, moving beyond the superficial exchanges we once settled for. We're discussing things we'd avoided for years, our fears about aging, our disappointments, our hopes for the future. It's uncomfortable, sometimes even painful. But I feel that it's a necessary discomfort. We're slowly dismantling the walls we built, trying to understand each other in a way we hadn't since our early years together. In these conversations, there's a tentative hope, a shared vulnerability that feels raw but real. Perhaps most surprisingly, I found myself thinking of forgiveness, not just as a gift to Betsy, but as a liberation for myself. Carrying resentment feels like a weight, a chain that binds me to this painful chapter. By forgiving her, I'm giving myself permission to move forward, to create a future that isn't defined by betrayal, but by growth, by resilience. Forgiveness, I'm learning, isn't about excusing the hurt, but about releasing its hold on me. There are days when I falter, when the old anger resurfaces, when I question everything. But those moments are growing fewer. Each day, I'm learning to replace anger with compassion, judgment with understanding, and fear with hope. This journey isn't about erasing the past. It's about building a future that honors the lessons we've learned. It's about finding a new way to love, one that embraces imperfection, that acknowledges the scars we both carry. As I sit here reflecting on all that's happened, I feel a strange sense of gratitude. This experience, painful as it was, has brought me closer to myself, to my values, to my purpose. It's reminded me of the resilience I possess, of the love I still have to give, both to myself and to others. And as for Betsy, only time will reveal whether our marriage can withstand this trial. But whatever happens, I know that I'll emerge from this stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the things that truly matter.
Hello everyone. My name is Jennifer. I didn't grow up rich, but I still managed to get a job and get married. My husband's name is Max, and he works at a fancy hotel. I thought my life would be a fairy tale, but things didn't turn out that way. My childhood home wasn't wealthy, we didn't have a lot of money, but I don't blame my parents at all. They gave up nice things for me, took me to fun places, and taught me about different cultures. Maybe they loved geography, but as a kid, I often thought they were trying too hard for me. I didn't want my parents to worry about me anymore, so I decided to start working right after middle school. My mom would say, "You should at least finish high school, it might be hard to find a job without it." My dad would agree, saying, "Yes, we have enough money saved to send you to high school." I was really happy about how my parents felt, but more than that, I wanted to make life easier for them as soon as possible. "It's okay, the sooner I start working, the sooner I'll start earning more," I said, not very sure of myself. But, like my parents said, there was no guarantee I'd find a job. During that time, I had a friend named Jessica, who had moved here from another country when we started middle school. Her family wasn't rich either, which might be why we got along so well and always hung out together. Jessica could speak some English, so we managed to communicate. Without realizing it, I started learning Spanish just by talking with her. By the time I was in 9th grade, I could speak Spanish pretty well. Maybe it was my Spanish skills that helped because, surprisingly, a travel agency decided to hire me. They saw value in my ability to speak Spanish. Jessica and I, having both left school after middle school, started working and gradually lost touch. I focused on my job, determined to earn money. Time passed quickly, and soon I was 26 years old. I often used a hotel lounge for work. It was a fancy but cozy place, and the snacks and coffee were reasonably priced. We held our meetings there with the staff. The waiter working there at the time was Max. The hotel hosted many foreigners, so he spoke Spanish too. Sometimes, I would be there with foreign guests. Maybe because we both spoke Spanish, we connected right away. Max started a conversation, and before I knew it, we were in a whirlwind romance that led to marriage. For a girl from a poor family, getting married was a big deal. I expected to start an exciting new life, however, reality was quite different. When we were getting married, Max had a request. "If it's okay with you, Jennifer, I'd like us to live at my family home." His father had passed away a few years ago, and he was worried about his mother living alone. Her energy levels were dropping, and having someone around to help her seemed like a good idea. Since I worked remotely, Max thought it would be convenient for me to stay home, look after his mother, and handle the household chores. On the flip side, Max often worked long hours and wasn't home much. With his rare days off, having me, a home-based worker, around must have seemed like a good arrangement to him. But I couldn't agree to it right away. When I first visited Max's family home to introduce myself before our marriage, his mother reacted strangely after asking about my education. "Jennifer, which university did you graduate from?" she asked. When I honestly replied, "Well, I didn't go to college. I only finished middle school," my mother-in-law went silent and just looked at me. Her expression showed she looked down on me. "Oh, middle school. Well, she said, eyeing me with disdain. Because of this, I thought living with her might not be easy, so I mentioned my concerns to Max casually. "Max, do you think your mom has some doubts about me?" I asked him. He chuckled a bit and replied, "Nah, that's not true. Mom trusts me, and I'm sure she doesn't have any bad feelings toward my wife either." His words made me think maybe I was worrying too much. Max also promised that if any issues arose, he would talk to his mother for me. With that reassurance, I agreed to move in with his family. But once I started living there, things weren't as smooth as I'd hoped. It was a harsh reality check. Whenever Max and I visited his family's house, his mother would speak to him with such warmth. "Max, thank you. I'm so grateful you're living with me," she would say, and Max would respond, "Of course, I knew it would help you out." They seemed like such a close mother and son. But towards me, my mother-in-law's attitude was completely different, cold, even. "Well, Jennifer, just make sure you don't hold Max back," she'd say emotionlessly, as if she were giving orders to a servant. It was clear she still looked down on me. But at that moment, Max stood up for me. "Don't worry, Jennifer is doing a great job working too," he said. However, when I mentioned this, my mother-in-law briefly looked stern, a detail I didn't miss. I figured I should talk to Max if things ever got troublesome and decided to handle it my way. We were family, after all, and I didn't want any tension between us. That's how we started living together, but reality didn't bend in a favorable direction. One day, as I was working on my computer as usual, my mother-in-law burst into my room and said angrily, "Hey, Jennifer, when are you going to clean my room? It needs to be done by 10 a.m. every day." I was surprised because I had never heard of such a rule before. Sure, I agreed to do household chores, but we never discussed to what extent. If she had just told me kindly from the beginning, that would have been fine. After all, I have my own job and can't be available all the time. However, arguing wouldn't be mature, so I quickly finished my work, apologized, and started cleaning her room. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was just relaxing in the living room, watching TV and eating snacks. Max had mentioned concerns about his mother's health, but she seemed well enough to clean her own room. I had imagined she might have difficulty walking, but she was more lively than I thought. Once the cleaning was done, she immediately ordered, "Now, start making dinner, and I like it plain. I won't tolerate anything too strong." She even told me to go shopping for ingredients right away. I thought it was too early to start cooking, but I decided to get it done and return to my work. When I got back from shopping, my mother-in-law was still relaxing. It was hard not to feel annoyed, but I chose to hold back and just finish what needed to be done. I thought maybe she was testing me, hoping she'd understand in time. But that hope lingered for months. There were days when she complained about me being just 5 minutes late with the laundry or that the bathtub wasn't cleaned perfectly, nitpicking to an almost obsessive degree. Before I knew it, I ended up doing all the chores around the house while my mother-in-law just lounged around. Honestly, if she had the energy to nitpick, she could very well do some chores herself. I started to worry that if this continued, it would start affecting my job too. That was the last thing I needed. So, I decided to wait until the evening to talk to Max about it. Once my mother-in-law had gone to bed, I told him everything. "Hey, I think your mom just doesn't like me. I'm getting so tired of being constantly criticized," I said. But Max just chuckled and said, "Come on, that can't be true. Mom's a kind person. There won't be any issues as long as Jennifer doesn't do anything strange. Please try to get along with her." He didn't believe me. Maybe it's because she's always doting on him and never complains to him. In fact, when Max is around, my mother-in-law says, "Jennifer, why don't we take a break and have some tea?" But even knowing that, there's a limit to my patience with this kind of life. I spend all day doing household chores and end up having to work on my job at night. To be honest, my trust in Max is starting to fade. If nothing changes, I might just collapse from all the stress. Then, in the midst of all this, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "Jennifer, I'll be away for about a week, about 3 months from now, so make sure you keep the house in order, okay?" She sprang this on me out of nowhere. When I asked what was going on, she said, "Max suggested we go on an overseas vacation." That's my boy, always knowing. I was thrilled at the thought of traveling abroad. I couldn't wait. But when my mother-in-law dropped the bomb about the vacation, I was shocked. Max hadn't mentioned a word of it to me, and it seemed like I was being left out, expected to stay behind and manage the house. I needed to talk to Max about this right away, so I brought it up that night. His response was surprising. "Oh, Mom already told you. But you're coming too, right?" It turned out we had misunderstood each other. It seems my mother-in-law had lied to me. Even if Max wanted me to go, I couldn't possibly enjoy a trip with her. In frustration, I told him, "I don't want to go. I can't possibly have a good time with your mother." Then Max completely lost it and lashed out. "Jennifer, what the heck are you saying? How long are you going to keep up this childish nonsense? I won't allow you to speak ill of Mom like that. You better reflect on this. It's a vacation abroad, for crying out loud, and I want to enjoy it too," he retorted. I was completely shocked. I couldn't believe Max wouldn't trust me this much. Staying in that house had become nothing but agony for me. To prove to Max that I was telling the truth, I decided to take action. The next day, since Max was off work, the three of us had breakfast together. That's when I confronted my mother-in-law. "You're trying to leave me out of the trip abroad, aren't you?" I asked. My mother-in-law replied defiantly, "Oh, did I say that, Jennifer? If you want to come, just come along, right?" But Max interrupted, "Hey, Jennifer, don't you understand yet? Apologize to Mom. Why are you being so defiant? You're not a child anymore." Despite my desire to clear things up and make Max understand, my mother-in-law insulted me in the worst way. "Well, maybe Jennifer should just stay home, right? It's too early for someone like you to travel abroad. You won't appreciate the experience with your lack of education. Besides, lazing around at home every day without working, do you even deserve to go abroad? You know it, don't you?" she sneered. I was shocked that she still believed I was unemployed. I've explained my job to her multiple times. Even during our greetings, I've told her what I do, haven't I? I confronted her, but she just looked down on me. "What job? Remote work? Don't joke with me. You're just playing on the computer at home. It's been getting on my nerves every day." "There's no way you're making money with that. You're just stealing Max's earnings," she blurted out. That really made me angry, but before I could respond, she went even further. "I have Max, and that's enough for me. Max can speak Spanish and works at a renowned hotel. There's no need to waste his earnings on a woman like you, uneducated and unemployed. A bottom feeder like you should just leave as soon as possible." She continued, just kept going. After all her harsh words, I looked at Max, hoping he would understand. But his response was unexpected. "Well, I can understand how Mom feels. Maybe Jennifer needs to cool off a bit," he said nonchalantly, as if he were fed up with me. At that moment, I made a decision. I couldn't endure being treated like this by both the mother and son any longer. Even though my mother-in-law told me to leave, I still wanted to confirm. "Am I really supposed to leave?" I asked, laughing. She replied, "Of course. Leave as soon as you can. We don't need bottom feeders like you around." I said, "Understood," and began preparing to move out. I simply nodded to the two of them and left the house. As I was leaving, my mother-in-law called after me with a sneer. "Enjoy your poor life as it suits a bottom feeder like you," she mocked. But they didn't realize that consequences would follow their actions. About 3 months after I left the house, around the time they were scheduled to go on their trip abroad, my mother-in-law called me. "Jennifer, I finally reached you." "What's going on?" She sounded quite frantic. "First," I replied, "I'm surprised you managed to call this number." She said, "Of course, I tried several times and couldn't get through. I even called your parents' house to get your new number." I had informed my parents that if either Max or my mother-in-law called, they should call back at this number. "What's wrong?" I asked, with a tone of concern. She replied, panicked, "What's wrong? We're getting all sorts of collection letters." "Help me out, I didn't know about any of this." "Well, that's expected. You haven't been paying the utilities, have you?" I simply answered. My mother-in-law seemed lost in her thoughts. "I absolutely thought Max was covering our living expenses. To find out you were paying for everything, why didn't you tell me? I had no idea you were making that much money." "It's a bit late to bring this up now," I said, though perhaps Max had finally told her the truth. "That's right, I had already started my own business using expertise I gained from the travel agency where I used to work. My business had grown to the point of earning $20 million, being widely accepted around the world. What probably shocked my mother-in-law even more was Max's income. Just because he worked in a lounge at a well-known hotel didn't mean he was making a lot of money. If anything, Max was just an average worker on the lower end of the pay scale, and speaking Spanish at that hotel was nothing special. There were many Spanish speakers there. Even if he could speak it, it wasn't anything remarkable. There was no way his income could cover the living expenses for 3 people. In reality, just making ends meet for himself was all he could manage. It's ridiculous that she hadn't realized until a collection notice came that I was the one paying all the living expenses for my husband's family. But the more I listened to my mother-in-law, the more shocking facts came to light. The reason why she insisted on me living with them wasn't to keep an eye on her, it was because she had been living off my father-in-law's wealth. Blinded by a temporary influx of cash, she had spent lavishly until there was nothing left. That's when she turned to Max, presuming he was earning well. But Max knew his income was low, and he was somewhat aware of my earnings, which is why he turned to me for help. Hearing this only confirmed how irresponsible they were, but their irresponsibility didn't stop there. "By the way, are you managing to make the car payments?" my mother-in-law exclaimed, raising her voice. "Exactly. Both Max and I have bills piling up since you moved out. I've been receiving more and more credit card statements addressed to both of us. The amounts due each month kept increasing, and before I knew it, they amounted to quite a sum. Their level of luxury spending was beyond me. I have no idea how they were spending without paying the living expenses, she added, sounding exasperated. Max's bills had surpassed his salary, and my mother-in-law hadn't stopped her old habits of lavish spending. It seemed they had both gotten themselves into debt, now totaling over $440,000. What's even more shocking is they thought Max would somehow manage it, if it was just a bit of debt, as my mother-in-law put it. And Max thought I would take care of it if things got tough. The level of dependence in grown adults was appalling. Beyond exasperation, I was starting to feel the danger. So when my mother-in-law brazenly said, "So, Jennifer, you can sort this out for us, right?" I was astonished by her audacity. I made it clear to her. After everything that's happened, you're asking for help now. There's no way I'm helping. That's when Max suddenly took the phone. "Hey, Jennifer, you're my wife. You have a duty to help us out. Do something. We can't pay this off," he demanded. I couldn't believe their nerve, but I did offer him a glimmer of mercy. "So, you want to come over?" "I might consider it if you do," I replied. He was immediately enthusiastic. "Oh yeah. You'll let us stay, and you'll sort out the money. Then let's do that. Where's your place?" "I'll head there right now," he said eagerly. I had to be honest. "Well, if you can make it, I'm in Hawaii right now. I have a vacation home here." Both Max and my mother-in-law couldn't hide their shock. "What? You mean Hawaii?" "We can't afford to go there right now," Max panicked. I calmly replied, "Weren't you planning to travel abroad? Just swing by Hawaii, your mother would love it. And you did ask my family for my phone number, right? Didn't you realize it was an international number? Oh, and don't forget the cost of this call. It adds up if you're on for a long time," I added, making my point clear. I said, "If we get divorced, I might think about helping with the money too." Max quickly replied, "All right. I got it. Let's just get divorced first, then." It seemed like Max realized his debts were something he couldn't trade for anything else. So, I told him I'd deliver the divorce papers once I got back to California and ended the call. About a week later, I returned to California, made sure to have the divorce papers properly written up, and the divorce went through without a hitch. Max looked quite worn out, so I guess he'd been living pretty lean these last few days. He mentioned something at that time. It turns out he had been counting on my money for the overseas trip as well. Hearing that didn't even surprise me anymore. They probably thought I would pay off their debts, but of course, I had no intention whatsoever of doing that. What I proposed was, first of all, for both of them to stop living so extravagantly, and then for Max and my mother-in-law to work hard. I told them that if they did, they could eventually pay off the debt and at least manage the basics. When Max heard this, he lashed out. "Hey, that's not what you promised. You were supposed to think about the debt." But I replied, "That's why I did you a favor by thinking of a way for you both to handle your debt repayment. So, good luck. Once you can afford to travel abroad again, I'll invite you to my Hawaii villa," I said with a touch of sarcasm and left their place. Afterward, they both seemed to be working themselves to the bone from dawn till dusk, barely scraping by. It was probably a good lesson for them since they'd had it easy until now. On a different note, I heard that Jessica also built a house in Hawaii. I had a reunion with her after so long. She took up a job that took her around the world after graduating from middle school and now seems to be a company president, just like me. She had her parents come over to the house she bought, and they've been living it up together. So, I called my parents over from California, and we started living here. Now, I sometimes visit Jessica's place. We both feel blessed to be able to give back to our parents and encourage each other as we work hard at our jobs.
Discovered my wife is cheating when her affair partner punched her into the hospital. So I did this, and now years later, she can't accept my engagement to my fiancé. If ever there was a prize for the most horrible way to learn of your significant other's affair, I would probably win it and be in its Hall of Fame. Like so many people in this sub, I suddenly found myself as a member of a club that nobody ever wants to be a part of. I will never forget the sound of my ex-sister-in-law's voice as she kept saying, I'm sorry, over and over on the phone while I drove home from a week-long business trip. I was confused and had absolutely no idea what she meant, but only after I managed to calm her down somewhat did she inform me that my wife was in the hospital and that I needed to hurry home. My mind went into overdrive as I tried to get more information as well as not crash while I began speeding to get there faster. The only thing she told me is that it was an assault, and then cut the call and wouldn't answer when I tried to call her again. A bit of background. My ex and I met in our mid-20s. It was through a mutual friend at a barbecue. At first, she seemed almost too good to be true. Not only was she incredibly beautiful, but she was also shy and introverted. It took a while for us to officially date, but once it happened, I was over the moon. When we first tried to get intimate, she suddenly started crying. She'd have taken this as a bad sign. I freaked out and thought it was something I did, but she apologized the next day and told me she was triggered. As it turns out, 2 years ago before meeting me, she was in a long-term relationship and a guy that was abusive both emotionally, physically, as well as mentally. He would degrade her during the moments of intimacy, then apologized afterward. She had a flashback, but reassured me it had nothing to do with me. So we took things slow as she was still in therapy. It was tough, but because I loved her, I believed once we got over this, it would make our relationship stronger, and for a while it honestly appeared that way. Fast forward another year, and we got engaged. First-time intimacy also happened during this stage. I was fortunate enough to be able to buy a house for us courtesy of inheritance from my late uncle. Things were going great, and I have seriously suggested we plant a peach tree, important for later on, to signify new beginnings, and she was all for it. We were wedded not long after that, and quite frankly, it was absolutely amazing. Of course, we had our normal ups and downs like every murdered couple, but I considered us more lucky because she always made it a point to never go to bed upset with each other, and she would always point out gently if I did anything that upset her. Sometime later, life basically happened and I was promoted at my job. It meant more pay, but it also meant I would be traveling more for work conferences and business meetings. I noticed she had been getting down a lot more and wasn't being as intimate as before. She would keep her phone close to her and even stopped gently addressing things that upset her. I tried to talk to her about it, but she assured me that she was fine and this was a phase she was going through and having no reason to not trust her and let it go. She would sometimes go to her sister's place and spend the night telling me she just needed a bit of girl time with her sister. The day I got that fateful phone call was the day she was meant to be keeping her sister company again. I remember rushing into the hospital barely breathing and frantically asking about my wife when world's most understanding and patient police officer sat me down to explain what happened. He told me he was a friend of my sister-in-law and he happened to respond to a domestic disturbance call. He arrived on the scene to find a couple fighting. The supposed boyfriend was on top of the female punching her and she was screaming trying to scratch him. This didn't make any sense to me because, 1, it had nothing to do with my wife because we're married, and 2, literally everyone who knew my wife knew she wouldn't do that. He gave me a knowing look and placed his hand on my shoulder, then told me to be very calm because said girlfriend was actually my wife. If it weren't for the severity of the situation, I would have laughed in his face, but something in the way he said everything made me believe him. I then was ushered in by a nurse to see my wife, and what greeted me to this day, I still can hardly find the words to describe it. I just stood there for what seemed like an eternity. Then a doctor came in and explained her injuries to me. The jaw was slightly fractured. Her left eye was completely swollen shut and had massive bruising covering half of her face as well as 3 broken ribs. Then the doctor dropped another bomb and told me she was pregnant. I still couldn't understand how this happened. Then I caught sight of her sister. She at first tried to avoid me, but at the persuasion of her police officer friend, she told me what she knew. It turns out my wife's ex had gotten in contact with her 5 months ago. He was doing this redemption pyramid step thing where he would apologize to people he has wronged in order to clear his karma. Anyone else's betrayed spouse meter going crazy right now? They began talking more, Then he convinced her to meet up for coffee and show her he was a changed man. Obviously, old feelings resurfaced coupled with the fact that he appeared changed now. It soon developed into an emotional affair. My wife approached her sister for advice, who told her to take things slow and just get it out of her system if she needed to, which then led to a physical affair 3 months later. She actually told my wife that she should at least make peace with her ex in whatever form it may be, and even offer to cover for my wife once in a while. My sister-in-law was in tears at this point and kept apologizing to me, saying that she didn't know about the abuse as my wife never told anyone other than me and her therapist at the time about it. I was numb. I just couldn't feel anything and was absolutely dumbfounded by my wife's actions. When my wife finally woke up, I was there and she burst into tears upon seeing me. I spent the following months in zombie flight mode. There was individual counseling for her as well as marriage counseling for us at the strong urging of her family. In counseling, she was surprisingly forthcoming about how it happened and how she absolutely hated herself for causing me pain. She mentioned how at one point on her way home from his place, she actually fantasized about driving into the river because she smelled like him and didn't want his scent to corrupt me. However, that made sense. She said she then tried to end it, but it was too weak, and only after learning that she was pregnant that it actually woke her up and made her realize that any further contact with this man was toxic to not only her but the unborn child as well. Hence, went to end things in person for good when he snapped on her. She became a shell of herself and developed a phobia for any other males but me. At one point, she couldn't even use the bathroom at night unless I was holding her hand. Sad, right? After the baby was born, son by the way, we got our paternity test and he was mine. But the more time I spent with her, the more I realized I didn't hate my wife. I actually loathed her. I couldn't see the woman I married, but instead saw his leftovers each time I looked at her. I decided to leave because I was afraid I'd do something I'd regret and be exactly like her abusive ex. She begged me not to leave and even made the ridiculous offer of giving me a hall pass as well as slapping her if I wanted to. I knew at this point I had to get out. She was actually very generous during the divorce. She moved back into her parents and signed a very well thought out co-parenting plan issued by the courts. Moving forward 3 years later, and I meet my now fiancé by chance. I was in a bookstore with a buddy of mine, and we were discussing Egyptian mythology when this beautiful woman approached me to correct me on my pronunciation of the Egyptian god cities. Needless to say, I'm instantly impressed by not only her understanding but also by the fact that she is Egyptian herself. We exchanged numbers, which eventually led us to dating. When I finally proposed to her, it was actually in front of the peach tree I had planted years ago. I got down on one knee, but before I got my answer, she ran into the house and came out with a ring as well. Turns out she was actually planning on proposing herself because she was madly in love with me, and she didn't just want any other woman to have me. My son, in all his sweet childlike innocence, told his mother what happened because he was present when it happened. My ex literally showed up that night in the rain yelling about how could I propose to her, my fiancé, in front of our tree, and that this is the end of us. I am completely exhausted at this point. I cannot go no contact because she is the mother of my child, but she is basically harassing me and my fiancé. How do I convince her to move on, to get over her fear of men and not force me to get a restraining order? Sorry it was long, but I am really desperate. Edit. I wanted to ask a question to the insightful women of Reddit. Something that still bugs me to this day is the fact that she even made time for her ex who took pleasure in destroying her only for her to suffer a much worse fate. Is it normal for the abused to want the attention of the abuser even if she might hate him? The person who took pleasure in my ex said once. Edit 2. Forgot to add this in the original post. When my fiancé presented me with a ring which she was going to use to propose to me, she had an engraving on the inner band which dates to my pharaoh. Damn, I love this woman. Update. First off, a big thank you to the user Mama2045 for your simple yet amazing advice. Saved us a lot of trouble. Now on to what has happened so far. Since my last post, my son's birthday was coming up and he told us he wanted to have a camp night for it. Now I must explain, the boy absolutely loves the outdoors. Everything from camping to hiking to even playing in rivers are his favorite, and obviously due to an ongoing situation, we cannot go to our usual spots. So I offered my backyard for it. Another request he had was for my ex to sleep over as well. He wanted to imitate a scene from one of his kid adventure shows where both parents were sitting on either side of the child, and all three are roasting marshmallows on the campfire. Now I had absolutely no intention of denying my son's birthday wishes, but at the same time, I couldn't have my ex sleep in the same tent as me and my son. That would be far too disrespectful to my fiancée, even though she said she understood. It was clear she wasn't okay with it. My ex seemed to take advantage of this and kept saying how much she was looking forward to spending the night with her two men, and even went as far as to buy a whole lot of camping equipment that would put Bear Grylls to shame. She was certainly trying to rub it in my fiancé's face, and wasn't graceful about it either. I had to tell her to stop a couple of times, but she only relented when I threatened to invite her sister. Ever since our divorce, my ex has had a burning hatred for her sister. She, my ex, acknowledges her role in the destruction of our marriage, but blames her sister for encouraging the affair and not safeguarding from her making choices that would ruin hers, but more importantly, according to her, our life together. It's gotten so bad that she refuses to let her sister spend any significant amount of time with her son, which at one point caused my ex-sister-in-law to have severe depression. My ex-sister-in-law has been trying for years to reconcile with her sister, but it just seems to get worse as time goes on. A Redditor, Mama 2045, offered me a simple and effective solution. She suggested I go out and purchase a multi-room tent, that way my fiancé could be included. I wasted no time and immediately went out to get one. Of course, my ex wasn't too happy about that, but was glad to be under the same roof as me. During the birthday celebration, my son was on cloud nine. He ran around the yard and pretended he was a great explorer discovering a new land. When evening came, I made the fire and my ex provided the marshmallows. He excitedly sat between us and started roasting his marshmallow alongside us. What I didn't expect was after we were done taking pictures and making s'mores, he handed my fiancée a stick and a marshmallow as well and sat next to her to make his second s'more. It's honestly a mystery how something this pure and perfect could come out of the absolute mess that was the relationship between me and my ex. My ex asked for a bit of my time, to which I obliged. We stepped into the kitchen and she apologized for her behavior on the day that I proposed, but not for her actions following that. She told me she still sees me as her husband in her mind, so the thought of me giving my heart to another terrified her. She said she never wanted to cause me pain and would give anything to go back in time and undo her mistakes. She mentioned how happy she was when the paternity test showed that I was the father, because she thought it was a new beginning for us and that he was proof of our love. I thanked her for the courage to share all of this, but told her I was happy with where I was in life and with whom I was with, but hoped she would find someone to make her happy as well. She said she meant what she told me on that day we divorced and will wait for me. I left the kitchen feeling exhausted because none of what I was trying to say got through to her. We decided to call it a night, where me and my fiancé slept in one room with the tent and my ex with my son and another. All in all, a good birthday for my son, but not so good night for me.
Pacific Airlines Flight 739 was preparing for takeoff from San Francisco to New York. In the terminal, hurried passengers were making their final adjustments. Before boarding, among the hurried passengers was a 7-year-old girl with blonde hair and curious eyes, holding her father's hand tightly. She wore a light blue dress, a soft contrast to the bustling airport atmosphere. Her father, a stern-looking man, seemed distant, almost absent, as he typed frantically on his phone. Inside the plane, flight attendant Harry was making the final preparations for takeoff. Tall and with a welcoming smile, Harry was known for his ability to handle any situation on board while always maintaining calm and courtesy. He walked through the aisles, checking the overhead compartments and ensuring all passengers were comfortable. As he passed row 12, Harry noticed the girl and her father settling into their seats. The girl looked directly at him, her large eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and something more, perhaps a plea for help. Harry smiled at her and continued his walk, but the feeling that something was off remained. The cabin was filled with murmurs and muffled laughter as passengers got comfortable. Harry returned to the front of the plane to give the safety instructions. He glanced at the girl's father, who was now more focused on his phone than on his daughter. The girl, on the other hand, seemed restless, looking around as if searching for an escape or an answer. As the doors closed and the plane began to taxi on the runway, Harry couldn't help but think about that girl. He had seen many children on his flights, but there was something different about her, something that intrigued and worried him at the same time. With takeoff complete and the plane stabilized in the air, Harry decided he would keep a close eye on row 12. The seemingly routine flight was about to turn into something much more complex and unexpected. The flight attendant, unaware, was at the start of a journey that would change both his life and that of the girl forever. With the plane cruising, Harry made his first round through the aisle, handing out drinks and snacks to the passengers. As he approached row 12, he noticed the girl was more agitated. She looked around with wide eyes, as if searching for something or someone. Her father remained engrossed in his phone, oblivious to his daughter's restless behavior. When Harry offered drinks, the girl took the opportunity to speak to him. She gently tugged on his uniform sleeve and in a low and urgent voice said, "Sir, can I talk to you?" Harry crouched down to her level and smiled gently. "Of course, how can I help you?" The girl looked nervously at her father before responding, "I'm scared. I don't want to be here," she whispered, her eyes filled with held-back tears. Before Harry could respond, the father looked up, noticing the interaction. With a cold look, he pulled his daughter back to her seat. "Don't bother the flight attendant, Jenna," he said in a firm, controlled voice. Harry nodded and moved away, but the concern didn't leave him. He continued his rounds but kept a watchful eye on row 12. Something was definitely wrong. Determined to understand the situation better, he returned to his station and watched discreetly. Shortly after, Harry noticed Jenna doing something peculiar. With subtle, careful movements, she was making signs with her hands, hiding them from her father. Harry tried to decipher what she was trying to communicate, but he couldn't fully understand. Intrigued and worried, he decided to seek help. During a break, Harry went to the galley and called one of his team members, Rose. "Rose, I need your opinion on something," he said, quickly explaining the situation. Rose frowned. "Maybe she's trying to tell you something important. You need to find out what it is without alarming her father." With Rose's new perspective, Harry returned to the aisle. He saw that Jenna was now more desperate, her signals more intense and urgent. Harry knew he needed to act quickly but cautiously. He had to figure out what the girl was trying to communicate before it was too late. Determined to help Jenna, Harry planned a discreet approach. He took a notepad and a pen and, pretending to take drink orders, approached row 12 again. When he got close to the girl, he quickly wrote a message, "Are you in danger?" He showed the note to Jenna, hiding it from her father with his body. The girl looked at the note, then at Harry, and gave a slight affirmative nod. Harry felt a chill down his spine. He needed to understand more. He continued walking through the aisle, watching from a distance. Jenna started making hand signals again, this time more clearly. Harry realized she was drawing letters in the air. It took him a few seconds to understand, but he finally deciphered the word help, confirming his suspicions. Harry knew he needed to act quickly. He went back to the galley and asked Rose to cover for him for a few minutes. Then, he went to the nearby restroom and waited for a moment when Jenna could leave her seat without attracting her father's attention. After a few minutes, the girl managed to escape and met Harry in the restroom. Locked in the small space, she finally opened up. "My dad, he did something bad. I don't want to go with him. I'm scared," she confessed. Harry reassured her, promising that she would be safe. "Jenna, I need more details to help you." "What exactly did he do?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. Jenna, with tears in her eyes, explained in a low voice, "He took me without my mom's permission. He said we were moving somewhere else and that I would never see her again. Please, don't let me go with him." Harry's heart tightened. He knew the situation was serious and needed immediate attention. He hugged Jenna and promised he would do everything in his power to protect her. Returning to the cabin, Harry discreetly informed the pilot about the situation, who contacted the authorities at the destination. They arranged for the police to be waiting when the plane landed. The girl went back to her seat, and Harry kept a watchful eye as the flight continued. The mystery was beginning to unfold, and the tension on board was increasing with each passing minute. As the plane continued its journey, Harry kept a close watch on row 12. He needed to ensure Jenna's safety until the plane landed. Her father still seemed oblivious to the situation, engrossed in his phone. Harry, trying to remain calm, began jotting down notes in his pad to appear busy. He quickly wrote a plan of action for the rest of the flight crew, detailing the need to monitor row 12 and keep a close watch on the girl without alerting her father. The tension increased with every moment, the flight seemed endless, and Harry knew any mistake could put Jenna in even more danger. He felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders but had no intention of failing. Midway through the flight, the plane encountered unexpected turbulence. The shaking made passengers grip their seats, and Jenna looked at Harry with wide, frightened eyes. He gave a slight, encouraging smile, trying to convey a sense of security. When the turbulence passed, Harry noticed Jenna's father observing her more closely, as if he sensed something was wrong. Harry knew he had to act quickly to prevent the father from becoming suspicious. He approached Rose and whispered, "We need to keep things calm. The father is starting to get suspicious." Rose nodded and began engaging with nearby passengers, diverting attention from any suspicious movements. Harry returned to row 12, this time bringing a cup of juice for Jenna. "Here you go, to help you feel better," he said, handing her the cup with a smile. Jenna took the juice and gave a small smile in gratitude. As he walked away, Harry felt a momentary relief, but the feeling was brief. He knew he had to be ready for any eventuality. Approaching the cockpit, he informed the pilot once again about the need to be prepared for a quick and discreet disembarkation with the presence of the police. The following hours were tense. Harry and the crew worked in perfect coordination to ensure Jenna's safety, disguising their actions with routine tasks. Each minute felt like an eternity, but the plan was in motion. With each step, Harry felt hope that everything would end well despite the imminent danger. As the flight neared its destination, Harry noticed Jenna becoming increasingly anxious. Her father, though still focused on his phone, occasionally cast suspicious glances toward her. Harry knew time was running out, he needed to act carefully. He decided to talk to Rose again, who was serving coffee at the back of the plane. "Rose, we need a plan to get Jenna away from her father as soon as we land. We can't wait for the police to get here. We need to move fast," Harry said urgently. Rose thought for a moment and suggested, "We can use the disembarkation as a distraction. I'll make an announcement saying everyone needs to exit quickly due to a technical issue. That should scatter the passengers and give us a chance to separate Jenna from him." Harry agreed, recognizing the effectiveness of the plan. He returned to the aisle, keeping a close eye on row 12. As the plane began its descent, he discreetly prepared Jenna. "When we land, we need to leave quickly, okay? I'll take care of you. Trust me," he whispered. Jenna nodded, her expression a mix of fear and hope. Harry returned to his station, anxiously awaiting the moment of landing. When the plane touched down, Harry felt an immediate sense of relief followed by a surge of adrenaline. The plan was in motion. Rose made the announcement, and passengers began moving towards the exit with more urgency than usual. Jenna's father stood up, holding her hand tightly. Harry approached quickly and said, "Sir, let me help your daughter disembark. It will be faster and safer for everyone." The father hesitated, but the general confusion made him accept the help. Harry took Jenna's hand and led her towards the front of the plane, his heart racing. He knew every second counted. As they exited, a group of undercover police officers disguised as airport staff was waiting. Harry handed Jenna to one of the officers and returned to the father, who was starting to realize what was happening. "What are you doing?" the father asked, his voice full of suspicion. Harry remained calm and responded, "We are ensuring everyone's safety, sir. Please follow me." The police quickly detained Jenna's father, explaining the situation, while Harry walked away with Jenna. Jenna looked at him, still scared but relieved to be away from her father. Harry felt a wave of relief as he watched Jenna being taken to a safe place. He knew the hardest part was over, but there was still much to be resolved. The revelation about Jenna's father and his intentions had changed everything. Now it was time to ensure Jenna's safety and that justice was served. The organized chaos of disembarkation began to dissipate as passengers were directed towards the terminal. Harry watched closely as the undercover police officers escorted Jenna's father to a secure area. Suddenly, the father realized what was happening and tried to break free, yelling angrily, "You can't do this. She's my daughter." Jenna, hearing her father's voice, cowered behind Harry, who maintained a protective stance. "Please stay calm, sir. The authorities will clarify everything," Harry said, trying to calm the situation. But the father was unwilling to cooperate. He struggled and managed to break free from one of the officers, advancing towards Jenna with a furious expression. The surrounding passengers began to step back, scared. Without thinking twice, Harry placed himself between the father and the girl. "Stop! Don't make this worse," he said firmly and authoritatively. The father hesitated for a moment, but his rage seemed uncontrollable. He tried to push Harry aside, but before he could advance, the police tackled him to the ground and quickly handcuffed him. "This is a mistake," he yelled. "She's my daughter." As the father was taken away, Harry knelt beside Jenna, who was crying silently. "You're safe now. Everything will be okay," he said gently and reassuringly. Jenna looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and fear. Harry hugged her, offering comfort. She desperately needed it. He knew she was about to face a whirlwind of emotions and that her life was about to change forever. The police returned to talk to Harry. "Thank you for your help. We'll take care of Jenna and ensure her safety. You might need to give a statement about what happened during the flight," said one of the officers. Harry nodded. "Of course. I'll do whatever is necessary." As the police led Jenna to a safe area, Harry felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The situation had been intense and dangerous, but he knew he had done the right thing. He watched as Jenna disappeared with the police, knowing there was still more to be done to ensure her safety and justice. The confrontation had been the most intense moment of his career, but also the most rewarding. Harry was about to leave the security area when one of the officers called him. "Sir, can you please come with us? We need a bit more information," the officer said politely but firmly. Harry agreed and was taken into a room where Jenna was sitting with a social worker. The girl looked more relaxed but still showed signs of fatigue and fear. The social worker motioned for Harry to sit down. "Jenna has told us part of what happened, but we'd like to hear your version as well," said the social worker. Harry nodded and began to recount the events of the flight, from the moment he noticed Jenna's strange behavior to the confrontation with her father. He explained how the girl made signals asking for help and how he and the crew planned to ensure her safety. As he spoke, Jenna held the social worker's hand for comfort. The officer took detailed notes, and the social worker occasionally interrupted with more specific questions. "Did you notice any other suspicious or dangerous behavior from the father during the flight?" asked the social worker. Harry thought for a moment. He seemed completely disinterested in his daughter, focused only on his phone. But the look he gave her when he realized we were interacting, it was scary. He seemed more irritated than concerned. The officer finished his notes and thanked Harry for his cooperation. He stood to leave, but Jenna called to him in a soft voice, "Harry, thank you," her eyes filled with gratitude. Harry smiled at her, feeling a wave of emotion. "You were very brave, Jenna. Everything will be okay now." As he left the room, Harry felt the weight of the situation begin to lift. But just as he thought everything was under control, he heard an alarm go off. A commotion began to form in the terminal, with people running and shouting. "What's happening?" he asked one of the guards. "There was an escape attempt. Jenna's father tried to escape custody," the guard replied, clearly agitated. Harry felt his heart race. He ran back to the room where Jenna was. When he arrived, he saw the girl was safe with the social worker and 2 officers. Her father, however, was nowhere in sight. "We need to reinforce security here. He can't get near her again," said Harry, trying to stay calm. The terminal was in chaos, but the police quickly organized a search. After tense moments and a frantic search, they finally located Jenna's father hiding in a restricted area. He was restrained again, this time with reinforced security. With Jenna's father finally detained and taken away, Harry returned to the room. Jenna ran to him and hugged him, relieved. He returned the hug, feeling a mix of relief and satisfaction knowing she was safe. The extreme situation had been resolved, and Harry knew Jenna was now in good hands. The sense of duty fulfilled stayed with him as he walked away, certain that despite everything, everything would be okay. With Jenna's father finally detained and security reinforced, Harry felt a wave of relief. He returned to the room where Jenna was now accompanied by a group of professionals, including social workers and child psychologists. "Jenna, you're safe now," said one of the social workers with a warm smile. "We'll take care of you and make sure everything is all right." Jenna looked at Harry, still holding his hand. There was a silent connection between them, a mutual understanding of what they had gone through together. "Harry, thank you for everything," she said, her voice soft but full of sincerity. Harry smiled, crouching down to her level. "You were very brave, Jenna. Always remember that." As Jenna was led away, Harry felt satisfaction but also exhaustion. He knew he had done everything in his power to protect the girl. As he watched the team take Jenna, one of the officers approached him. "You did a great job today, Harry. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't noticed the signs," said the officer. "I just did what anyone would do," Harry replied modestly. Later in the terminal, Harry saw a woman approaching quickly, her eyes filled with worry and tears. It was Jenna's mother. When she saw her daughter, she ran to hug her, holding her tightly. "Jenna, my God, are you okay?" she said, her voice choked with emotion. Jenna clung to her mother, crying but this time with tears of relief and joy. "I'm okay, Mom. Harry helped me," Jenna said. The mother looked at Harry with infinite gratitude. "Thank you. You saved my daughter," she said emotionally. Harry nodded, feeling touched by the moment. "She's a very special girl. I'm glad I could help." As the mother and daughter reunited, Harry felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He knew Jenna was in good hands and that the situation, despite how difficult it had been, was finally resolved. Towards the terminal exit, feeling the day's weight begin to dissipate, the night sky was clear, and he took a deep breath, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. Despite the challenges and dangers, the courage and determination of a little girl and the quick actions of a flight attendant had changed the course of her life. As he left the airport, Harry knew that this experience would stay with him forever, a reminder that even in the most difficult moments, it's possible to make a difference and bring safety.
Hey there, I'm Jessica, and I'd like to share with you the complexities of my relationship with my mother-in-law. Ruby, she always seemed to make things hard for me. Ruby had old-fashioned ideas and never really liked me. For a while, my husband Michael and I lived far from them, so Ruby couldn't bother us much. But when Michael got a job close to them, we had to deal with her more. I could handle Ruby's behavior because I grew up dealing with difficult people like my own parents. Luckily, Michael's dad, Jasper, was always nice to me. But the tough part was that Ruby spent time with my daughter, Erin, who was 9 at the time. Erin loved her grandparents, and they were the only ones she knew well since I didn't have contact with my own parents. Even though Ruby and I had our issues, I put them aside for Erin's sake. I wanted Erin to have a good relationship with her grandparents. Michael also cared about family a lot, so I couldn't just cut Ruby out of our lives. Erin enjoyed spending time with her grandparents, but Ruby still caused problems sometimes. Ruby kept criticizing Erin's diet, saying I wasn't feeding her right. She thought Erin needed more nuts for protein, but Erin was allergic to nuts, and even their smell made her sick. I told Ruby this many times, but she wouldn't listen. She said Erin needed to eat nuts to get over her allergy and called me a bad mom. I knew you'd say this, Ruby. We talked to the doctor, and Erin's meals are balanced. Skipping nuts won't hurt anyone, but it could make Erin really sick, I told her. Even after explaining and listening to the doctor, Ruby didn't change her mind. She thought exposing Erin to nuts would help her allergies. I was tired of arguing with her and tired of being called a bad mom. Ruby even tried to get Erin to eat nuts, but Erin knew better and always said no. Feeling more and more worried about what Ruby might do, I decided to talk to Michael about it. I'm really concerned about leaving Erin alone with Ruby. I'm afraid she might give Erin food she's allergic to, thinking it will help her allergies, I told him. Don't worry so much, Jessica. My mom might have old-fashioned ideas, but she knows her boundaries, and Dad is always there to step in if things get out of hand. Erin loves being with her grandparents, and we can't just stop her from seeing them, Michael said, trying to reassure me. But Ruby keeps ignoring Erin's allergies. I'm genuinely scared for Erin's safety whenever she's with them without me. We need to talk about this. I can't keep worrying like this, I insisted. Relax, Jessica. There's no need to stop Erin from seeing my parents just because of this small issue. Erin loves being with them, you know. And if you're worried about Mom, I'll talk to her. She'll listen to me, Michael assured me. His words made sense. Erin really enjoyed being with her grandparents, so I couldn't bring myself to stop her if she had ever said she didn't want to see them. I would have respected her decision, but I didn't realize that even Michael couldn't change Ruby's behavior. Things came to a head at Erin's 11th birthday party. Jasper and Ruby were invited, and they said they'd come. Ruby seemed really excited, which made me uneasy, though I didn't know why. When they arrived early, it surprised me because Ruby usually avoided being around me. She gave Erin a big present wrapped in birthday paper and said, "Happy birthday, Erin. Here's your gift. Grandma got you something really special." Erin thanked Ruby, and then Ruby said, "Wow, that's a big gift. What's inside, Grandpa?" "I have no idea, Erin. Grandma chose it, and she won't even tell me what's in there." "We'll both find out when you open it," Jasper said. "Come on, open Grandma's gift and see what she got you. I bet you'll love it, sweetie." "I'll be your favorite grandma ever," Ruby said excitedly. "I can't wait to see what you got me, Grandma. I'm so excited." "We'll open all the gifts after we cut the cake," Erin suggested. "No, Erin needs to open my gift before cutting the cake." That's why I came early, to give her my special present, Ruby insisted. Despite feeling suspicious about Ruby's behavior, Erin seemed genuinely happy to get such a nice gift from her grandma. The big, heavy package made Erin even more excited, and she couldn't wait to see what was inside. She wanted to start opening her presents once all her friends were there. I agreed to let Erin open Ruby's gift before the cake, as Ruby said it had to be done that way. I didn't want to upset Erin on her birthday, so we went along with it. But little did I know what a disaster it would turn into. Luma and her parents were let down by the one person they trusted. Ruby not only ruined Erin's birthday but also turned everyone against her. When Erin opened the gift, she found a big cake with her name on it. She was happy for a moment, but then she passed out. Michael and I rushed to her, scared and confused, when we saw her throat swelling up in shock. I watched as Michael hurried to get an epinephrine shot while someone else called the police. Knowing exactly who was behind this, I confronted Ruby, demanding answers. What on earth did you put in Erin's cake? What's in it? I asked, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Ruby pretended she didn't know anything, saying, I didn't do anything, Jessica. It's just a regular cake. I have no idea what's happening. Maybe something you did caused Erin to faint. You've been neglecting her nutrition despite my warnings, and now she's paying the price. Don't try to blame me. Erin was fine just a moment ago, and now she's having an allergic reaction. Tell me what you did to her, Ruby. I hope you didn't mess with the cake. You need to own up to your actions and take responsibility. Look at Erin, she's turning blue, I snapped back, ignoring Ruby's excuses, focusing solely on Erin. I hurried over with the epinephrine I always kept on hand for emergencies. Although Erin's swelling went down a bit, she remained unconscious. It was clear that she needed to go to the hospital to fully recover. The room was filled with worry for Erin, tears welled up in my eyes, and even Michael looked close to crying. Ruby, who was already in tears, seemed scared. In that moment, I decided to cut open the cake to see what was inside. What I found shocked me to the core. I demanded answers from Ruby, questioning her sanity for putting nuts in the cake. Ruby, what were you thinking? You ignored my warnings and put nuts in the cake, putting Erin's health at risk. How could you be so careless? I only wanted to help Erin, not hurt her. I didn't like that Jessica was so strict about Erin's diet. While it's true Erin might have reactions sometimes, I thought gradually giving her nuts could help, Ruby argued. My frustration boiled over when I confronted Jessica, saying, Are you crazy? Our daughter is allergic to nuts. She could have died from this reaction. Who gave you the right to decide how to handle her allergies? Look at the mess you've made. I'm Erin's grandma, and I have the right to take care of her. She'll be fine. You're all overreacting. You're just trying to scare me for no reason. I'm sure this is all part of Mila's plan to make me look bad. But listen, Ruby, if things go my way today, you'll be in big trouble. Right now, all I care about is Erin's health, I said firmly. Just then, the ambulance arrived with paramedics. They took care of Erin and took her to the hospital with us following closely. The doctors told us Erin would need time to wake up and would have to stay at the hospital for a day or two. We were all overwhelmed with emotion. I broke down in the hospital, finding comfort in Michael's arms. After calming down, I called Jasper to let everyone know that Erin was no longer in danger. When I hung up, I turned to Michael and expressed my anger, saying, I'll never forgive Ruby for what she did today. She could have put our daughter's life at risk. I've been thinking about how serious this is. It's unbelievable, something I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it myself. My mom has become someone I don't even recognize anymore. She did all of this just to make me look like a bad mom. She acted like she cared about Erin's happiness, but she never thought about how dangerous it was for Aaron. Even after everything, she still says I planned it all. Today showed me how far my mom will go to make you look bad. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner and didn't do more to keep her away from us. I need to protect Aaron from my mom's bad influence. I failed as a husband and as a father. Michael was starting to realize how serious the situation was, and Jasper, who had always been a good grandfather, was clearly affected by Ruby's actions. This time, she went too far. Even though she'd gotten away with things before, we weren't going to let her off easy this time. We decided then and there that we couldn't let Ruby keep hurting Aaron. Her actions were a threat to Aaron's safety, and we couldn't allow her to keep causing trouble in our lives. Ruby was no longer welcome in our family. We were determined to protect Aaron and make sure she grew up in a safe and loving environment. It wouldn't be easy, but for Aaron's sake, it was a decision we were ready to stand by. Following a heartfelt discussion, my husband and I quickly made a decision while Aaron was still in the hospital. It was time to head back home. Jasper, Ruby, and a few guests stayed behind, eager for updates on Aaron's condition. This gave us the perfect opportunity to address Ruby's actions. When we got home, 4 hours had passed since the incident. In the living room, we found Jasper scolding Ruby while she seemed indifferent, busy on her phone. The untouched birthday cake sat sadly beside them, a painful reminder of what had happened. Despite my sadness, I held back my emotions. When they noticed us, Jasper and Sophia hurried over. I just got an update, I said. Erin is in good hands, and she'll recover soon. Although she's still unconscious, the doctors are hopeful. Thank goodness, Erin will be okay. I was so worried, but it looks like everything's fine. It wasn't even a big deal. Erin will be fine, and her nut allergy will go away soon, Ruby declared. In that moment, Michael unleashed his anger on Ruby, scolding her for everything she had done. Jasper joined in, expressing his disappointment, and the guests, visibly shocked, stared at Ruby with disapproval. I too was filled with rage. I've had it with you, Ruby, I declared. We've given you so many chances to change. Even after your actions put my daughter in the hospital, you show no remorse. This is it. You will never be allowed near Erin or our family again. You're banned from this house. You can't tell me where to go. Your son won't cut me off for no reason. I won't let you keep me from my granddaughter just because we don't agree on how to raise her, Ruby shot back. No, Mom, Michael replied firmly. You're not welcome near me or my family ever again. Dad can come here anytime, but not you. He's the only sensible grandparent Erin has. He's done his best to keep Erin safe. But today, you put Erin in the hospital and acted like it was the right thing to do. I can't let someone so heartless be around my daughter. Ruby couldn't believe her own son was turning against her. She could always trust Michael to support her, not realizing he was being rational, unlike her. Even the guests started criticizing her. Ruby felt trapped with no one on her side, not even Jasper. In desperation, she screamed at us, blaming me for setting her up. This is all your fault, Jessica. You turned everyone against me. I'll never forgive you for this. You should be begging for our forgiveness. Your actions have ruined your reputation and kept you from Erin. I'll sue you for grandparents' rights. I'll take you to court, and the judge will let me see Erin. Just wait and see. I don't need anyone to support me, I responded firmly. You're not going to have much luck getting grandparents' rights from jail. I'm sure the judge would find it pretty funny to have a criminal asking for visitation after putting her own granddaughter in danger. What are you talking about, Jessica? Why would I go to jail? I didn't do anything wrong. Ruby protested. Didn't do anything. I shot back. What you did is a crime, Ruby. You can be arrested for knowingly exposing a child to allergens. It's considered a form of poisoning. Maybe you didn't realize it, but Michael and I did. We've already called the police on you, and look, here they come now to arrest you. Ruby, in denial, insisted, no, you're lying. This can't be happening. You can't arrest me for this. Ruby's panicked expression showed her desperation as she begged us not to send her to jail. Tears flowed down her face, and she started to panic. Just then, 2 officers came in and told her she was under arrest. She clung to her hands, begging us not to send her to jail. Michael remained unmoved, telling the cops to take her away, while I gave Ruby a cold look, showing that her deceitful game was over. In a last attempt, she turned to Jasper for help, begging him to do something. Jasper, please. You can't let your wife get arrested like this, she pleaded. But Jasper stood firm, saying, when my wife does something truly terrible and shows no remorse, I won't protect her. I've warned you for years to change, and you never listened. Today, you put our granddaughter in danger. I was only trying to protect her, not realizing it would hurt her so badly. Please, Jasper. I'm your wife. You have to help me, Ruby pleaded desperately. But Michael stood by his decision, saying firmly, Ruby, I've already cut you out of my life. It's the right thing to do, and I plan to do the same tomorrow. I'll talk to a divorce lawyer. I want to end this as soon as possible. I won't stay with someone like you. I'll protect my granddaughter and my kids from you. Ruby was shocked and pleaded desperately, no, 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 Jasper, you can't do this to me. I'm your wife. Ignoring her, Jasper told the cops to take her away. Ruby continued crying and begging for help, bringing a tumultuous end to an event that had long concluded. A sense of peace washed over me as Michael, Jasper, and I went back to the hospital after the other guests left, clearly upset by Ruby's actions. They promised to tell everyone what she had done. The next day, Erin woke up feeling much better, but she was terrified of Ruby. Erin cried and begged us to keep her away from her grandmother, saying how Ruby had tried to make her eat things she was allergic to. To help Erin deal with her feelings, we got her a therapist. At the same time, Michael and I started going to therapy together to work on our communication as a family. Having Jasper's support was really important for all of us. With his help, we started to heal and grow stronger as a family. Ruby's life took a sharp turn for the worse after the incident. Her actions caught up with her, and she faced serious consequences. Once her own family found out what she had done, they scolded her and cut ties with her. Even her friends were disgusted by her behavior and stopped talking to her. With no one to turn to, Ruby found herself in a desperate situation, begging everyone for bail money. But she didn't get any help, and Jasper filed for divorce the next day. Ruby was served with divorce papers while still in jail. Receiving the divorce papers herself sent Ruby into a fit of rage. In the following months, Jasper was able to get a quick divorce, taking advantage of state laws with the police report as evidence. Our legal case against Ruby moved forward. Despite the expectation for Ruby to cover Erin's medical expenses, her financial struggles resulted in a lengthy prison sentence as the judge ruled against her. Moreover, we obtained restraining orders to ensure she stays away from our family. With confidence that Ruby won't have the chance to approach us again, we remain watchful. But if by some chance she tries to cross the line, she'll encounter the fierce protection of Mama and Papa Bear, who are determined to do whatever it takes to keep Erin safe.